Hey everybody, welcome into the back room. I'm Andy Ostroy. Today we'll be chatting with filmmaker Jordan Matthew Horowitz, which I'll get to Jordan in just a second. But first, thank you for tuning in. We appreciate you listening, and we'd love to hear your comments. So email us at backroomandy@gmail.com and or post on our social media, and we'll read some feedback next time. And if you like the podcast, please follow or subscribe and rate and review, and you'll be notified every time we post a new episode. So Jordan Matthew Horowitz is an Emmy-winning writer-director of both documentary and narrative film. His recent documentary, Jack and Sam, about Holocaust survivors Jack Waksal and Sam Ron, was executive produced by Julianna Margulies and Sarah Silverman and was shortlisted for a prestigious IDA award. His other films include the documentary ANGEL of NANJING and the narrative feature film PAINLESS. He is currently in development on a feature narrative version of Jack and Sam. All right, Jordan, welcome into the back room.
Thanks for having me.
So I just want to say that I've watched the film several times now. I can't get through it without crying every single time. A few moments ago, before we hopped on the Zoom with you, my team and I, Maddie and Jen, my co-producers, we watched it together. We were all crying. It is so touching and poignant and haunting, and the story is so beautiful. The point of it is so important, yet as a film, it is done so beautifully, from the cinematography, the animations, the music. Everything about it is just perfect. It is a perfect film. So congratulations to you.
Wow, thank you so much for saying that. I really appreciate that. It's amazing how much more poignant and relevant the film is today than when I made it almost 2 years ago, right?
Mm-hmm. Sure. Well, I want to give you an opportunity, in your words, to describe the film, because I think nobody can describe a film better than the filmmaker. And so tell us about the film.
I like to describe this film as a love story about the Holocaust. It's about two people who were friends in a camp, in a work camp in Pionki, until one of them escaped, and they never saw or heard from each other again until very recently. A couple of years ago, he randomly goes to an event, and his friend just so happens to be the guest speaker at the event. Neither of them had any idea the other was still alive or anything. They actually ended up, turns out they lived very close together, and it's about their friendship in their late 90s. And it's just this beautiful story of friendship that survived 8 decades, and it's about two people who've really gone through some of the worst atrocities in human history and have come out such, positive human beings and have done so much to help society.
Mm-hmm. And one of the gentlemen, Sam, he passed away last fall.
Yeah, unfortunately in October, right after the war in Israel started, he passed away. And we were very fortunate. We had a screening at FAU University in Florida with both Jack and Sam right before that happened. It was in late August. And there was about 450 people there. And you could tell that Sam was struggling at that time. He'd been in and out of the hospital, and he was kind of weak. But he was so engaged with the audience, and both he and Jack were just so happy to be there and to see their film on the big screen and to see this audience reacting so positively to the film. It was definitely one of the highlights of my career. It was definitely the highlight of my career. I've had that experience before, seeing my film on the big screen, but for them to have that experience and for me watching them have that experience was incredible. I'll never forget that.
Mm. And how did you first get involved with Jack and Sam? What brought you to this project?
Well, I first learned about them. I like to go to these feel-good websites to just kind of cheer me up when I'm in a bad mood or whatever.
I mean, like Breitbart and OAN News, that kind of stuff.
I think this one's called Good News Network. And it was basically, mostly it's like cancer stories, like cancer research stories, like things you can't really make a film about. There's not really a specific face on it. But this particular story, the reunion had just happened between them, I think like a day or two before. And immediately I knew this was a story I had to do. Actually, I'll say this. I never thought I would tell a Holocaust story. I just didn't think there was anything I could say about the subject that hasn't already been said before. But when I read about this, I was just like, wow, this is such a beautiful story of friendship. Mm-hmm. And also at the time, like I said, it was almost 2 years ago. Even then, I was worried about the rise in anti-Semitism that I was reading about around the world and seeing in Los Angeles. And I had no idea how much more relevant the story would become today, which is obviously something that disturbs me profoundly and that I'm constantly wrestling with. But again, yeah, it was just such a beautiful story when I learned about them. I knew immediately it was something I had to go and do. And then it was kind of I had to put my detective hat on and figure out how to get a hold of them. And I think I might have tweeted at the reporter of the story, and I'm pretty sure that reporter put me in touch with Monica Levin, who does PR for the United States Holocaust Memorial Museum, which was putting on the dinner where they reunited. And she was able to kind of connect the dots and get me in touch with them. And, typically with a film, you take some time to try to raise some money and do things like that. But because of their age, Sam was 98 at the time, Jack was 97. I was like, I don't want to wait a second. So I literally got on the phone with them. And 2 weeks later, I was just there shooting the film with whatever resources I had, credit cards and rent money and everything. I was like, I'm just going to film this and then I'll figure it out later.
Right, which is the way a lot of films are made, especially documentaries. Yep. Were they initially receptive?
Yeah, I think so. I think they were both. One thing that I love about both of them is they love talking to people about this story, not just the reunion, but the Holocaust in general, because you can see it in the film. It's so important to them to educate people about what happened. And one of the biggest messages of the film is about the dangers of hatred and what it can lead to. And I think that's something that we can see is becoming a more important and relevant message every single day. And I think giving them a platform to express that is something that's really meaningful to them. So yeah, I think that is something they're very, very open to and receptive to.
You mentioned before that the film has resonance because of what's taking place in the world today, and in particular in this country with regard to heightened anti-Semitism and hate crimes. Does it amaze you and anger you and frustrate you when you see the lack of education when it comes to the Holocaust? We're almost at a place where there's just too many people today that don't even believe it existed. And even if they know it existed and they don't doubt its existence, they really have no idea what happened and the severity of it. I mean, I studied the Holocaust in college, yet every time I see, like in your film, the footage of the bodies in the wheelbarrow, you're like, how did this happen? But does it worry you that we will soon be at a place in this country or the world where Holocaust doesn't really have much meaning, significance?
It worries me a lot. I don't know the exact number, but you keep hearing these statistics about kids in school, not like the percentage of them that don't even know what the Holocaust is. They've never been taught about it. And the people that are starting to doubt it, that percentage is growing higher and higher every year. I think it's very disturbing. I know it's something that Jack personally is very upset about, especially because he thinks the amount of anti-Semitism he's seeing today is reminding him of Poland in the 1930s. So nothing good is going to come from this. History is so important. And it's extremely disturbing. I don't know what else to say about it. One of the important messages of the film that Jack says that really resonates with me personally, he's like, it's great to be educated. That's such an important thing, but don't be educated to hate. And I think that's what we're seeing, especially with social media and all these bubbles that everybody lives in, and in this whole tribalism of Yankees versus Red Sox. Everybody is just so stuck in their way and their way of thinking and refusing to talk to anyone outside of that circle. And it's just, this hatred is festering. You can see it everywhere. And it's not just with this one subject, and it's horrible. And I really think nothing good is going to come from this. And we have to do something, not just as a country, it's a worldwide problem. We have to find a way to let go of this hatred and try to come together, because you can see that these incidences are just getting worse and worse. It's really troubling. I don't know what to say. I'm so glad that this film is out there. And this is not, I say this with no ego. I'm just glad this film is out there films like this, trying to reach people, just to say, hey, let's have a conversation about these things. one of the things that was very important to me about this film it had to be under a certain length. I was like, this film cannot be more than 20 minutes.
Well, I wanted to
and
ask
there's a
you
lot
about that because
Yeah.
when we watched it, it seems like the perfect amount of time because you seem to understand that people today, young people in particular, don't have great attention spans, that you cannot overload them with this kind of subject matter. And so at 20 minutes, the way the narrative moves, the arc of Jack and Sam, and where they came from and where they've arrived at, it just seems like the perfect amount of time to get this very important point out.
Yeah, I mean, for me, what was very important was I had this film had to be palatable for young audiences because that was the most important demographic for me. Obviously, I want everybody to enjoy it, but I really wanted young people to be able to enjoy it, and that's also why there's animation in there.
Mm-hmm.
And I realized that it's just so hard to hold people's attention spans these days, as I'm sure you know, with
Mm-hmm.
TikTok and social media and everything. So I found that 20 minutes, it's just not only is it like the right length for audiences, it is the right length for this film.
Mm-hmm.
It just allows us to tell the story as succinctly as possible, leave audiences wanting a little more. You know, you never want to bore anybody. You know, there is a lot more story to tell, and that's why a writing partner and I, we've actually written a feature narrative version of this film, and I'm super excited about it, not only because there's so much more story to tell with Jack and Sam. I mean, Jack had this incredible love story with his wife, Sabina, who was in every ghetto and camp that he was in until she was sent off to Auschwitz. And then they eventually had an incredible reunion after the Holocaust. There's just so much beautiful stuff
Mm-hmm.
that can be told. But what's really exciting to me is the feature version of the film is really exploring the theme of the cyclical nature of anti-Semitism and how it will never go away. And it's a very relevant film to today. It actually, a lot of it takes place today. I mean, the opening scene of the film is actually at the Nova Music Festival massacre.
Mm.
So I'm just really excited to tell a story that's that relevant and topical.
Often when you make a film and it's like 20 minutes, it sometimes can feel like it's incomplete, like there's something missing.
Yeah.
And the real magic, I think, of your film is that it doesn't leave you feeling that way. You feel like you've learned enough about the Holocaust, about their story, about where they are today. Like you perfectly fill in the blanks to tell a full story, which isn't easy to do given that story, which spans 80 years in 20 minutes.
Yeah, it's a lot of story. You definitely cram it in there.
So the documentary, you have a couple of really prominent executive producers, Julianna Margulies and Sarah Silverman. How did they get involved with the project?
It's kind of a weird story. We were trying for almost a year to get somebody prominent to lend their name to the film, and we weren't having a lot of luck. And I happened to see again, this is before the war in Israel, I happened to see the ACL had released a list. They had started an anti-Semitism task force because, again, things were getting bad even before then. And I looked at this list, and there's a lot of Hollywood names on the list. And I was like, man, I'm just going to go down these one by one and contact these people. And using IMDb Pro, I'd get their contact. My producing partner, Andrew, and I just started hitting them up. And he saw an agent on there, Blair Cohen, and he's like, hey, I think I have a mutual connection to her. So his friend made a connection. We sent her the film, and she called us, and she's like, oh, I know that guy. That's Papa Jack. We're like, what? And she's like, I'm going to send this to my friend Jules, who happened to be Julianna Margulies. And Julianna's like, I know that guy. That's Papa Jack. And then they sent it to Sarah. And what's really funny is for the longest time, I had no idea how they knew him. Like, it just wasn't explained to me properly. And it wasn't until I think long into our festival run, we had a screening at Doc NYC in New York, and this woman came up to me and she's like, "Hey, I'm Eliza. I'm Julianna Margulies' best friend. I'm also Jack's granddaughter."
Oh, wow.
So that's how it all happened. Yes, but it took a long time, and we just kind of got lucky that we happened to contact the right person.
Now, had you known that Julianna is part of a program, founded a program and funded a program at Museum of Jewish History on Holocaust education. Was that something you knew about before you contacted her, or was it just like a random contact?
It was a random contact. Again, it came through her agent. But when she told us that, she actually set up a screening for us at the museum in New York, which is great. It's right in Battery Park City, and it was a beautiful screening. We had a huge turnout. It's been great, and having both of their names and support has helped us so much. It's helped get the film so much exposure. You know, we were able to get the film with Steven Spielberg, which is like a dream of my life, to have him take time out of his life to watch my film. Catherine Zeta-Jones watched it. I mean, it kind of became this little Hollywood darling.
Did you get notes from Spielberg?
No, well, we heard he loved it. He passed it on to the head of the Shoah Foundation, and we're talking to them about doing some educational stuff. You know, it was really great. I mean, nobody called me and gave me a meeting or you know, asked me what I want to do next. But just knowing that these people took 20 minutes out of their lives to watch something I made was really meaningful. And obviously, it's something I'll carry with me for a long time.
Will they be involved with the narrative?
Steven Spielberg?
No, yeah, produced by.
I hope so.
Julianna and Sarah.
We don't know. You know, right now I was just kind of focusing on writing the best script I could, and I'm in the middle of a revision, and I'm definitely gonna send it out to all the contacts that I've made from this film, and I hope so. I hope I'm open to anybody and everybody that can help get this film going. So if anyone out there is listening and they want to get involved, please hit me up.
What has the outreach been with the film? Like, have you used it as an educational tool? Are you going to college campuses, high schools, junior high schools? And is that the plan with the 20-minute version?
Yeah, it's a great question. I mean, so it started with just film festivals. We did tons and tons of amazing festivals around the world. And through that, at almost every festival, educators would come up to me and various people that, like, some people that were involved with museums and colleges and high schools. And every single person that has contacted me about showing the film, I've given them a copy of the film to screen. I haven't asked for any money. It's just it's so important to me that, again, that kids, young people are watching this film. And I'm really taking a page from Spielberg, who, with Schindler's List, I remember when I was very young, our school had a free screening of the film that I was told he had paid for, and he was doing that around the country. And I just thought that was such a cool thing for somebody to do. Obviously, I'm a much smaller person. I'm working on a much smaller scale, but anybody that contacts me for the film, I'm letting them show it. And we are now talking to a distributor about getting it into all the NYU, getting into the NYU library, so everyone there will have, the New York library, so everyone there will have access to it. And I think they deal with other libraries around the country as well. But yeah, I think we started with the festival route, and now we're starting to transition mostly into educational. And I think that, to me, is what's really exciting, because I think the film's going to live on kind of forever in that space. I think kids are always going to have this as a resource, which makes me really happy.
Oh, that's fantastic. So I want to ask you about your childhood. Did you have anybody in your family who was a filmmaker, who was an artist? How did you get interested in film and filmmaking?
I had no connection to the film industry at all, and I have nobody in my family was a working artist. Not to say there aren't creative people in my family, but nobody, that was never a thing for me. But growing up, you know, I grew up in kind of a dysfunctional family, as a lot of people in my generation did.
Welcome to the club.
I'm a product of divorce, and you know, I didn't have a lot of parental guidance during the day growing up, and on a typical day. And basically, like a lot of people, like a lot of my friends, I was pretty much plopped in front of my TV and raised by my television. And I just was obsessed with movies my whole life. And I think a lot of that, if you're going to psychoanalyze me, I'm sure a lot of that has to do with the fact that it was my escape from what was going on around me. But I remember even in class all day, like not paying attention, and just using like pencils and pretending I was in like a dog fight or something. And that kind of carried through, you know, most of my life. I was always one of those geeks who was just like, I'm going to be a filmmaker when I'm older. Like, it was just something I always wanted to do.
Was there a couple of films that were inspiring in particular to you?
Well, you know, when you're a kid, it's like Terminator 2 and Back to the Future. They're like the greatest films of all time. Never Ending Story and The Princess.
You weren't watching Mean Streets or Raging Bull or... Not
as a kid, but then, you know, when you get a little older, you get in your 20s, you know, Taxi Driver for me is one of the greatest movies of all time. I don't know if you ever heard of a movie called The Thin Red Line
Mm-hmm.
by Terrence Malick, but that movie, it's so philosophically deep that my jaw is open the entire time watching that movie. It's just so brilliant. And Pi by Darren Aronofsky was a huge inspiration, just because that was one of the first movies I've seen. Decent movie made for nothing, but that was the first movie made for basically $0, like a credit card film, as we like to call it, that I was like, well, you can make a really good movie on a credit card. And so that was a huge inspiration for me as somebody taking the DIY approach to filmmaking, where I'm like, you can't, like, it was like the blueprint, down and dirty, no budget, like here's how we're gonna do it. And yeah, movies like that really inspired me. I was very anti-Hollywood, coming out of college. I think it trains you to be, there's a snottiness that gets, an elitism that gets introduced to you in film schools, which is, it has some good merits and some really bad merits, and I was anti-Hollywood for a long time. And then as I got a little older, I started realizing the beauty of Hollywood films, and now I'm very open. I'm very eclectic in my tastes.
You've made another documentary called Angel of Nanjing and a narrative feature called Painless. You've obviously have one foot in the doc space, another with narrative features. Is there a preference? Is it easier to make one versus the other today, in your opinion?
That's a great question. I'll say I never thought I would do documentaries. I was always somebody that thought I'd be strictly narrative. And it wasn't until I read about this guy in China there's a bridge basically, which is the most popular place in the world where people commit suicide. And this individual took it upon himself to voluntarily go to the bridge every day and look for people and save them. And he's personally saved well over 300 people. And not only does he save them, but he helps them with their problems. So that became, I was like, as soon as I read about that, I was like, I have to go make this film. I went and moved to China. Over the course of 2 trips, I lived there for a year.
Wow.
And what's so beautiful about the film is you see a lot of these people's lives transform over the course of that year. And that really did give me the documentary bug. I would say I'm equally in love with both narrative and documentary. But to answer your other question, around 2020, when COVID was in full effect, I was getting very frustrated because I had a couple bigger projects that almost went. And it was that typical LA story that you've heard 1,000 times. It's going to go, the money's there. And crickets, they just ghost you. And it's so frustrating. It's like, dude, just have the guts to say what's up, And it really depressed me. And I was like, I've just spent the past couple of years talking about making films and not actually making a film. And that sucks. And I was like, I just want to pick up a camera and go shoot somebody. And what's so beautiful about documentaries is you really only need like 1 or 2 people to say yes to you. You just need a subject.
Yep.
And they just have to say, come film me. And I'd found this incredible subject who was helping all these kids during COVID in Guatemala. And I was able to get in touch with him, and he's like, come on down and film me. And I went down there with just a backpack full of gear. I had no idea what I was doing or what my situation was going to be or anything. I just went down there, and it was a beautiful experience. I knew how to navigate being in a foreign country on my own because of my experience with Angel of Nanjing. And it was just such a great experience. It really reignited me with documentaries. And now I will always, first of all, there has to be a great story to tell. But I will always try to make a documentary. If nothing else, it's a beautiful mental filler for when you're trying to get bigger projects done and they're not going or they're taking too long. But obviously I want to make bigger documentaries as well, which would require more money as well. But one thing I was talking about with a friend of mine recently is that, say you're making a down and dirty narrative film for, $100,000, $200,000, you can do a lot with that, and you can have a pretty quality film, but it's going to show. You'll see the cracks. You'll see it in the performances. You won't probably have the best. There might be some weaknesses in the acting. It might not be the best. You won't get name actors, and you'll see it in the production value. $200,000, you can make an awesome looking documentary. I think the money just goes a lot further. And the other thing I'll say is there's a lot less ego in documentary. unless you're doing a celebrity-driven documentary,
Right.
for the most part, there's so much less ego in documentary. You know, with narrative film, I feel like I was constantly running into, oh, well, what's in this for me? You know, what am I going to get out of this? With documentaries, take Jack and Sam, for example, when you tell somebody you're making a film about two people reuniting after 80 years who are Holocaust survivors, literally the first thing that they say to you is, what can I do to help you tell this story? You don't have that ego or that what's in it for me. And a lot of times when people come to the screening and they hear it's a Holocaust film, or when I'm even talking about it, like, oh, what's your movie about? I'm like, it deals with the Holocaust. Immediately they glaze over because everybody has seen so much material on the Holocaust. I shouldn't say everybody, because we were talking about how it's a huge problem with kids today, but the majority of people have seen all these Holocaust stories and the archival footage, and you kind of become numb to it. And even just in a conversation, I would see that where they're nodding their head, but you can tell they've tuned you out. And it's not until I get to the reunion that it's like you can literally see them wake up in real time and be like, oh, what? And then they're
That's
so
the difference,
engaged.
right?
That's the difference. And that's why, and you see it in the film too. And that's why there's things like the animation to try to keep you hooked. But every time we get to that dinner scene in the film, like you can feel the energy, like it just gets so like it just jumps so much.
And I see we have somebody who may be zooming in with us now, a little surprise guest. Hello, Jack.
Hi, Jack.
Yeah. Hi, how are you?
Great. It is, I just want to say it is an absolute honor to meet you, to talk with you. I've watched the film that you and Sam made with Jordan. I've watched it several times. It just blows me away, brings me to tears each time. It is such a beautiful story. Your story with Sam is so poignant, so meaningful, and just so crazy. That's the thing. It's just, you know, Sam says at the end, it's a miracle. It is a miracle, isn't it?
Yes, it is.
And do you believe it when you sit back and think about this arc that you and he have had for 80 years? And I'm so sorry to learn that he passed away last October.
Yes, me too. Me too.
I'm sure that was a profound loss to you on so many levels that most of us can't even understand.
Yes.
And so when you watched the film, when you participated in it, do you believe your own story in a way? Like, are you able to step back and go, my God, this story is amazing, isn't it?
It is amazing, but I knew it. You know, when I saw him, everything else, that I couldn't believe it in life. No, that is him, yes.
What was the moment like where you're sitting in that room and you realize...
The moment when I was sitting at the table, when I got in and I said, I know this person, when he come up to say a few words, to say which camp he was, he mentioned the camp Pionki, and everybody by the table, Jack, he was with you. It was a whole table, my whole family, and some other people, and they holler, look at him. And I said, he come a year before, this place was closed, you know, because they tried to take it, the whole thing to Auschwitz. And that's what my planning was in 1944, to run away to the forest.
Mm-hmm.
That's what my thing was, yes.
I can't fathom how you survived in the forest for 6 months with nothing but a shovel.
Believe you me, it was so, that's what we lost. Put it close to 8 people we lost. Because all the time when we went out to steal food by the farmers, they called the Germans and they was hiding. And when we went out, they started with the machine gun. And all the time we lost somebody. I lost my brother a month before the liberation. And it was just to me that I didn't want to live anymore. It was unbelievable in life. My plan was unbelievable good, and everything else, but the Poles never wanted to help you, that you could survive.
Mm.
You have to be afraid for the Poles, and you have to be afraid for the Germans. And you don't know which one was more, look at me, what I'm wearing now. That's what I was wearing. I heard. And I never was cold in the forest. You have to survive. And I did survive. I think I survived because to go ahead and to tell the world.
I wanted to ask you, you took 15 people with you into the forest, and Sam was there but chose not to go. He stayed behind. Why didn't Sam go with you?
I did not, Sam.
Mm-hmm.
First of all, I was up. I tell you, it was so much to be afraid. A day before, they approached me and they said, "You're going to escape. We're going to give you over," because it was Jewish police in this camp.
Mm-hmm.
And they come to me and they said, "You're going to escape." I said, you see me here. I'm not, because I was working, but the fence, all of 3 years, when I was in Pionki, I always saw how the guards go around and everything else. Because it was barbed wire, but you saw them going all the time around. And I know it, which hour they go and everything else. The only thing what I was supposed to get is the cutter. In Paul used to come around working sometimes daily basis. Sometimes he works with you and everything else. And one guy, and I said one time to a guy, "Please, if I could get a cutter, would you do me a favor, bring me a cutter?" And he said, "I'm going to do it." And he did it. He didn't know for what. I said, "I got trouble in my bags down there. I have to cut something off." And that's what I told him. And unbelievable. It was unbelievable, so good. But going out, I got the whole wire that nobody should be in trouble to go out. You got our camp, the railroad, and right away the forest. In one guy, we lost right away.
Mm-hmm. So it sounds like there had to be a lot of secrecy involved and a last-minute decision to do it.
Even at the camp, you have to be so secretly to say to some other people, because they was afraid if you're going to escape, they're going to kill some people. Who the hell cares?
Mm-hmm.
I never did care if somebody ran away, and that's all. But some people was unbelievable. There was couples, and it was unbelievable to tell somebody that I'm going to go to the forest. The only thing what I told people, what I knew I was working with them my whole year, from 1939 up, when the Germans come in. That's why I took the few people with me.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
How did it end? You're in the forest for 6 months. When did you know that it was over?
You could hear, you could see the tanks, but we know which tanks. We could stay in the forest and look at out how the tanks went through our place. Finally, when the tanks went through, and later it come through the military, the Russians, we picked up our hands on the top with a piece of white thing, and we went out from the forest. When they saw us, they said, "You're not Jews. In this, you Poles or something." And I said, "No, we are Jews. We are, And they took us into the office from the main people, And they said, that's the Jews. Yeah, they went to the camp and let them loose. And so I went home to my own city, which I was not welcome.
How important is this film to you in the sense of Holocaust education today? Does it concern you when you see the lack of education in people, and perhaps in particular with young people?
Was a lack of education, yes. We did, when I come to the United States, I went to Ohio. We did better in Ohio from the 60-some years thing in the school, the teachers, starting to do in the beginning. In my lovely wife, she was in Auschwitz and every place else. She went to schools. She went on TV, interview it, because I was afraid to go on interview because I am too rough, and I would mention, the Pope and that. And I told the guy from Channel 7 in Dayton, Ohio, I said to him, let my wife do it and let me stay home, because you'd be better off. You wouldn't like me because he was Catholic. And that's what I told him. The Pope could say one word. It is 99% Polish. They are Catholics. And he would say one word, leave the Jews alone. They wouldn't kill Jewish people.
Jack, how important is a Holocaust education today with everything that's happening in the world?
We should have educational, yes. It's so important that the kids learn, and they should take it over, because the survivors, if you were out here, they will be gone. And we need to have that. They deserve that. The 6 million people deserve that. That the people should know. Because you got some of them believe that it never happened. Countries don't believe. Some even Jewish people in the United States didn't know it was a Holocaust. And blame our own Jewish people in the beginning for not teaching the kids.
At the end of the film, Jack, you say you think it's never going to happen, but it did happen. How many similarities do you see to what's going on today to what you experienced in 1930s Poland with the rise of anti-Semitism and hate crimes?
It is getting the same type of anti-Semitism what starting in Poland in 1937 slowly in the universities. Jewish people couldn't go in to be a doctor. In Jewish name, they didn't took in Jewish people. You have to change your name to go into the university to become a doctor. And that's what the problem is. When you say, I didn't believe it, yes, when I come to the United States, and I went around and I said to people, that could happen again. And I told them, if we're not going to stand up against anti-Semitism, it's going to be more problems for the Jewish people. And that's what had happened. Since a year ago till now, over 20% anti-Semitism rate, more than this. And look, the universities, they don't let even somebody to come up and to open up their mouth to talk to them and to tell them. They don't let you do it. It's up to us to stand up and not to be afraid and not to hide as a Jew or as a Zionist.
Jack, you're 99 years old, and I think it is incredible that you're showing people that no matter how young or old you are, you can still have an impact in this world. And so
Yeah.
I appreciate, I'm sure there's a ton of people who see this film and I really appreciate what you're doing to get that incredibly important message out.
Yeah, That's what I did the last week. In the 3rd of this month, they invite me. They brought in all the survivors from Florida here, and they honor them. And they asked me to come up to speak. The Miami mayor speak before me, and they had said to me, would you say a few words? I went up and was talking about it. And later, everybody stand up. It was over 100 people, mostly young people. And that's what I did like it. And that's what I'm going. How long I can go on my feet and talk to people, I would never stop.
Mm-hmm. It is amazing, Jack. And again, thank you. And if you do ever make it to New York City, please let me know, and I will take you to Katz's Deli, and we can have a pastrami sandwich together.
Yes. Yeah. I will do it.
Same for Jordan.
I do it.
Uh-huh.
I definitely want in on that.
Well,
Yes.
my last question, Jack. How does it feel at 99 to be a movie star?
I'm not a movie star. I relate to people what happened to the Jewish people and what we need to do it.
Mm-hmm.
Not to be silent.
Yep.
That is my philosophy since I come to the United States.
Well, I hope we get a chance to do this in 99 years from now, when you're
Yes.
when you're 198, and we can see
Thank
where the
you
world
so
is.
much.
Take care, Jack. Such an
Yeah.
honor to talk with you.
Goodbye.
Bye-bye.
It was an honor to talk to you. Yes. And don't stop it. Okay?
Likewise. Keep on doing what you're doing.
Okay.
Take
Thank
care.
you.
Thanks, Jack.
Bye-bye.
Okay.
Jordan, congratulations with the film. It is truly unbelievable. And I wish you an enormous amount of success in the endeavor to make that a narrative, because I think it will be a truly beautiful and important, but to your last point, a really unique story about the Holocaust.
Awesome. Yeah, thank you so much. It's been great talking to you.
Likewise. Take care. This episode of The Back Room was edited and produced by me, Andy Ostroy. It was co-edited and co-produced by Maddie Rosenberg and co-produced by Jen Hammoud. Our theme song was composed by Andrew Hollander, and our logo was designed by Cricket Langell. And special thanks to Patricia Wind. Please take a moment to rate and review the podcast, and also follow or subscribe. Until next time, keep your eyes on Washington, Hollywood, and your own backyards, and have a great week.